Who are you and what in general have you contributed to the U.S. history?
I'm Richard Nixon. I was the 37th President of the United States, served for 1.5 terms. I was a Republican during my presidency. I also served under the Eisenhower administration as a vice president. Before all that, I served as a U.S. representative and a U.S. senator from California. I successfully ended American fighting in Vietnam and improved international relations with the USSR and China.
What do you consider your biggest achievement and why do you consider it that?
I consider my improvements with international relations with the USSR and China as my biggest achievements. In my summit meetings with Russian leader Brezhnev, I produced a treaty to limit strategic nuclear weapons, which were causing a lot of tension between the two countries. I also ended the war in Vietnam and reduced trade restrictions against China.
What laws and/or Supreme Court cases reflect your legacy as an American?
The Supreme Court case, me versus the United States, during the Watergate scandal, probably reflects me the most. Spying occurred in the Democratic National Election headquarters in the Watergate complex in order to cover up for the scandal, and this led to my resignation. And this will mostly be it is what I am known for instead of the good that I've done.
Who do you consider to be your political, social, and economic opposite in history and why?
My political opposite in history was probably Franklin Roosevelt. He was a Democrat and I'm a Republican. He began the military draft during World War II and I ended it right after the Vietnam War. And he entered World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, while when I became president, left the Vietnam War and ended fighting in Vietnam. Franklin dealt majorly with World War problems all over, while I had to deal with communist problems and helped resolve those problems. He did not have any crime like I had the Watergate scandal.
If you could go to dinner with any person in U.S. history, who would it be and why would it be them?
I would go to dinner with Barack Obama. I would like to discuss how it is to be president now, and discuss the differences between now and then. And he deals a lot with foreign affairs, and I used to deal a lot with foreign affairs, so we could discuss our differences there and see what he's coming up with. And he also ended involvement in the Iraq War, similar to what I did in Vietnam. And then he ended up returning, so I would like to discuss many reasons with him. He also deals with a lot of terrorism, and he has more military involvement than I did, so I'd like to discuss how he's dealing with all that military involvement.
Based on your life and experiences, what advice do you have for current and future generations of Americans?
I would advise to always follow the rules. What I did at Watergate was a very big mistake, and it is what I'll be known for instead of any good or positive things that I did.
All right, and then how do you feel about my own influences / my legacy in the United States?
I think that you had a great influence on our country. You served for 2 terms and did a great job with stimulating economic growth, curbing inflation, increasing employment, and strengthening our national defense. Your negotiations with Gorgovich was very important in eliminating intermediate range and nuclear missiles, and you also did a great job during your 2 terms with restoration and prosperity for our country. How do you feel about my own influence and the legacy in the U.S. history?
Well, President Nixon, I very much support your decision to end the draft, making the military an all-volunteer force. I think that was a very smart move. I also believe that deciding to put $100 million towards fighting cancer was very good. It's good that we started fighting that disease. I think a lot of people can learn from your advice, but I think a huge problem was with the whole Watergate scandal, and that'll always leave a lasting impression on your presidency. No matter all the other good things you've done, people will always remember that.
I also agree with your statements. I believe that the Watergate scandal will leave a lasting impression on me and will cover up all the good that I did. Now, how would you describe your legacy and why?
I would say that I was a very hardworking president, and that I'm most known for developing Reaganomics and also the speech that I was very passionate about at the Berlin Wall. I've also become beloved by many of my fellow Americans and strongly care for them in this entire country, and that's why I'm proud to have served as their president and worked very hard towards being the best I could be.
What do you consider your biggest achievement and why?
I believe that one of my greatest achievements was Reaganomics. Basically, Reaganomics was used as a way to control inflation and to... We're going to do that one again.
What do you consider your biggest achievement and why?
I believe that one of my biggest achievements, and many will argue my greatest achievement, which I will agree with them, was the development of Reaganomics. Reaganomics was used as the way of controlling inflation and helping spur economic growth through the uses of tax cuts, as well as reduced business regulations, which helped reduce the amounts in government spending, which was very much needed at the time.
What laws and/or Supreme Court cases reflect your legacy as an American?
The first major law I put into place was the Economic Recovery Act of 1981. This was basically a reduction of tax rates for individual taxpayers, as well as other incentives for saving. Another big thing was the national minimum drinking age, which was an act which made the minimum drinking age to go to 21, which still stands today. I think that these two laws show and reflect how much I care for my fellow Americans, as I intended to help save them money with the Taxpayers Act, which is always something that can benefit everybody, as well as hopefully trying to encourage younger people to not drink until they are of age and maybe more developed and can make smarter decisions and hopefully save some lives.
Who do you consider to be your political, social, economic opposite in history?
I think that our current president, Barack Obama, is almost an exact opposite of me. Obama initially wanted to lower the rates for all, the tax rates for everyone, but unlike me, he hasn't succeeded in that same way. Obama has led American business to higher tax increase while I tried to bring them down. Also, Obama has led to a drastic increase in government spending, which almost amounted to $1 trillion, while I was able to cut it down, which was one of the primary things I was going to work on. Obama was also a Democrat while I was a Republican while I was a president in office, and these could all be reasons why we differ so much politically, because of the Democratic and Republican views are vastly different when it comes to political, social, and even some economic ideas.
If you could go to dinner with any president in the U.S. history, who would it be?
If I could go to dinner with anyone from U.S. history, I would like to go to dinner with President George W. Bush, because he was the last Republican president that we had. I would very much enjoy talking to him and just comparing our presidency, as we were both Republicans in office, and it'd just be very interesting to see how different it was being a Republican president during this modern time, dealing with the huge increases of terrorism and seeing really what it was like in the president's eyes during 9/11 and all of the scary moments of his presidency, and just see how different it is from present modern day to the 1980s.
Based on your life and experiences, what advice do you have for current and future generations of Americans?
My time as a president was a very incredible and inspiring time for me. I learned a lot about myself as well as a lot about the country of America. My advice to anyone who wants to become an American president or just a successful American is I would tell them to be strong in your decision, but to make sure you have a strong base of people who can always back you up. Like with the president and me, I had a very strong cabinet that helped me through a lot of the problems and have led to a lot of helpful advice, helping make some of the decisions I had to make a lot easier. Living in America is really incredible, and it gives lots of the people in America a great life and opportunity. It's a hard world, but as long as you take some good approaches, you will work hard and you can be a successful American. President Nixon, what prompted you to commit the Watergate scandal?
There were various reasons into why I did it, but the main reason was probably because I lacked the confidence of winning my second term. So I felt pressured to do spying and recording that led to my resignation. President Reagan, your speech at the Berlin Wall was a very important and significant thing during your presidency. And to you, why is it so significant?
It was very important to me as it was a huge symbolism of communism falling once that Berlin Wall did fall. And that's big because at that time, communism was really being built up around the places, and especially America. And many of my other fellow presidents at that time were dealing with the hope and the scare of communism just rising around the world. So when we finally saw that wall fall, it was incredibly emotional for all the people around, and it just allows them for a better chance of freedom and for all the people of Berlin and all the people in Europe, and just gives them a better hope for a future without communism. And that's why it was so incredible for me and really everyone in the entire world at that time who did not want to support communism and didn't like how it was getting forced upon them.